The morning started like any other, but for Dwayne and John, it was already shaping up to be different. They had a long day ahead, filled with meetings, charity work, and some public appearances. But this morning, instead of traveling in a private car or limo, they had decided to take the bus. It was one of those mornings where they wanted to feel the city in its raw form, to see how people lived, moved, and reacted in real life without the barriers of VIP treatment. Both men had done this kind of thing before, but each time brought something new, something that reminded them why they connected with people the way they did. The bus rolled forward slowly, stopping occasionally to pick up passengers who shuffled in, glancing around and taking seats wherever they could. Most passengers barely noticed who was there, and Dwayne and John made sure to keep their presence low-key, simply settling into 2 seats in the middle of the bus. They weren't looking for attention. They were looking for perspective. The rhythm of the bus was calming in a strange way. The soft hum of the engine, the chatter of people, the occasional screech of brakes, it all combined into a rhythm that made them feel oddly grounded. At the back of the bus, tucked near the window, sat a small girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Her backpack was slightly too big for her small frame, and she held it close to her lap, almost as if it was a shield. Her eyes, wide and observant, followed the patterns of people moving through the bus. But there was a weight to her gaze that was unusual for a child her age. She wasn't fidgeting or making noise. She was just there, quietly taking everything in. Dwayne noticed her first, leaning slightly to glance over without making it obvious. There was something about her presence that made him pause. Maybe it was the way she seemed to watch without judging, or maybe it was the quiet strength she carried despite her small size. John, sitting next to him, noticed it too. He leaned over quietly, catching a glimpse of the girl, and immediately felt a tug of curiosity. Something about her felt real, felt grounded, and it was impossible not to be drawn in. The bus moved along, stopping here and there, passengers boarding and exiting, conversations buzzing lightly in the air. The little girl remained seated, but now she started to speak softly. At first her words were nearly inaudible, just as small murmurs that seemed like she was talking to herself. But the words were strange because they were thoughtful, reflective, and carried a weight far beyond her years. She spoke about her day at school, about classmates who didn't understand each other, about people who were sad and lonely, and about small things that made her happy. She didn't ask for help, and she didn't seek attention. She just spoke as if these thoughts were part of a story she was telling herself, a story she hoped someone would listen to. Dwayne tilted his head slightly, trying to catch more of what she was saying. John did the same, and soon they realized they weren't just hearing the murmurs of a child. They were hearing the words of someone who was seeing the world with clarity and honesty. The little girl was talking about kindness, about moments she had seen where people helped one another, and about her own small attempts to make someone smile. Her words were simple, but the meaning was profound. She spoke about empathy in a way that made Dwayne and John exchange a quick, subtle glance. They both felt it. The rare feeling when someone, even someone so young, reminds you of the best parts of humanity. As the bus rolled along, the little girl shifted slightly, hugging her backpack tighter. There was a sadness there, a quiet kind of loneliness that wasn't loud or dramatic but was impossible to ignore. Dwayne found himself wanting to reach out, to say something, anything that would ease the invisible weight on her small shoulders. John felt the same way, a sense of protective instinct stirring within him. Neither of them spoke at first. They didn't want to startle her. Instead, they just listened. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes the act of listening was the first step toward making a difference. The bus hit a small bump and the little girl's backpack slipped slightly from her lap. Dwayne instinctively leaned forward to help her, catching the bag before it tumbled to the floor. She looked up at him, and for a brief moment the bus seemed to pause around them. Her eyes were wide, but there was a flicker of something else there, trust, curiosity, and a hint of courage. She mumbled a soft thank you, almost shyly, but then she said something that made Dwayne and John both stop in their tracks. She told them, in her small but clear voice, that she wanted to help people when she grew up just like them. She said that even small acts of kindness mattered, that even tiny gestures could change someone's day. Her words were simple, but the truth in them was undeniable. It was rare to hear someone so young express such a deep understanding of life, of compassion, of responsibility. Dwayne felt a lump in his throat. He had heard inspiring words many times in his life, But something about hearing them from a child in a quiet, ordinary moment on a city bus hit differently. John's expression mirrored his own feelings, a mixture of surprise and admiration. Neither of them spoke immediately. There was no need. The girl continued to talk, sharing small observations about her school, her neighbors, the way people treated each other. She spoke without judgment, without anger or resentment, just observation and hope. Her words carried a weight that drew the attention of other passengers, though most were careful not to stare. The atmosphere on the bus subtly shifted. People began to listen, unconsciously leaning in to catch fragments of her words. There was a quiet, collective recognition that something special was happening here. Dwayne and John, now fully engaged, leaned closer, subtly signaling their interest and support without intimidating her. Dwayne asked a gentle question about what she liked to do when she tried to help people. She spoke about small things like helping a classmate pick up books that fell, sharing her lunch with someone who forgot theirs, or comforting a friend who was upset. Each story, simple as it was, painted a picture of a child with a remarkable heart. John nodded encouragingly, commenting softly on how meaningful these gestures were even if they seemed small. He shared a few stories from his own childhood, carefully tailored to show her that she wasn't alone in wanting to do good, that many people felt the same way but didn't always act on it. The bus continued its journey and the little girl's confidence grew. She started speaking more openly, sharing moments she wished were different, like seeing someone bullied or someone left out. She didn't speak with anger but with a quiet determination that things could be better, that people could care more about one another. Dwayne and John were struck by her perspective. It was clear she had been thinking about these things for some time, forming opinions and understanding emotions in ways that most adults might struggle to articulate. They exchanged another glance, this one filled with. The bus moved forward slowly, carrying its usual mixture of passengers, some chatting quietly, some lost in their own thoughts, and a few staring out the window at the early morning city. Dwayne and John continued to sit near the middle, glancing occasionally toward the back where the little girl remained. She seemed different now, almost as if the conversation from earlier had given her a small boost of confidence. Her eyes were brighter, and her posture was a little straighter. She still clutched her backpack tightly, but it no longer seemed like a shield. It was more like a companion she carried with her. As the bus hit another small bump, her backpack shifted and slipped a little from her lap. Dwayne quickly leaned forward and steadied it, handing it back to her with a gentle smile. She looked up at him and spoke, and her words immediately made both Dwayne and John sit up straighter. She said that she wanted to grow up to help people, just like them, and that she believed even small acts of kindness could make a huge difference in the world. The simplicity of the words was striking, but so was the depth. There was no pretense in her tone, no desire to impress. She was speaking from a place of pure honesty, from a heart that had seen things adults sometimes ignored. John glanced at Dwayne, sharing a look of astonishment. Neither of them had expected such profound thoughts from a child so young. Dwayne's mind raced for a moment, thinking about the countless times people had spoken to him about making a difference. Most of those conversations had been with adults, people who had spent years observing the world and forming their opinions. Yet here was a child, no older than 8, expressing ideas that made him pause, ideas that resonated deeply. John felt a similar sense of wonder. He leaned back slightly, listening more intently, careful not to interrupt but eager to hear more. The little girl continued, describing the small ways she tried to help others each day. She spoke of noticing when someone was sad and offering a kind word, of sharing her snack with a friend who forgot theirs, and of comforting classmates who were left out. Her voice was steady and calm, yet carried a quiet determination. Dwayne and John could see the sincerity in her eyes, the way she believed in what she was saying. It was impossible not to be moved. Other passengers began to notice the interaction. Some smiled quietly, while others whispered to the people next to them. The presence of 2 famous figures on the bus would usually draw attention, but it wasn't the fame that captured the crowd this time. It was the honesty, the purity of a small child speaking from the heart. The little girl didn't seem aware of the attention. She was focused on expressing her thoughts, and in doing so, she was changing the atmosphere on the bus without even trying. Dwayne decided to engage her a little further. He asked her what inspired her to think this way, what made her want to help people even when no one was watching. She paused, looking down at her backpack for a moment, then met his gaze. She spoke softly but clearly, explaining that she noticed when people were sad or lonely and it made her want to do something. She said that even small gestures, like a smile or a kind word, could change the way someone felt for the rest of the day. She explained that she didn't need recognition or praise. She just wanted to see people happier. John nodded, impressed by the thoughtfulness of her words. He shared a story from his own childhood, about a time he had helped someone and realized how much it could impact their life. He spoke gently, making sure his words were relatable, hoping to encourage her without overshadowing her own experiences. Dwayne added his own perspective, talking about moments when he tried to make a difference and how even small efforts could ripple outward in ways people didn't always see immediately. The girl listened intently, absorbing every word, clearly valuing the encouragement she was receiving. The bus continued its route and the conversation flowed naturally. The little girl began to open up more, sharing stories about her school, her neighborhood, and the small acts of kindness she had witnessed. She described a time when she had seen a friend being teased and how she had stood by them quietly, making sure they didn't feel alone. She spoke with a quiet confidence, showing that even at her age she understood the importance of standing up for others. Dwayne and John were both deeply impressed. It wasn't just the words she used, it was the thoughtfulness behind them, the understanding that even small actions could have a big impact. At one point, the bus came to a sudden stop and the little girl's backpack wobbled again. Dwayne reached over casually, steadying it without making a show of it. The girl looked up at him and then at John. She said she hoped that one day, more people would listen to kids like her, who notice things that adults sometimes overlooked. Her voice was calm, but the words carried a weight far beyond her years. Dwayne and John were both moved. They realized that even in a world full of attention, power, and fame, the perspective of a child could be more powerful than most speeches or public statements. Dwayne spoke gently, telling her that her words were special and that the heart and courage she showed were rare. He explained that true bravery wasn't about being strong or famous, but about standing up for what was right, just as she was doing. John added that small voices like hers could create big changes, and that people who cared and acted even in small ways could inspire others to do the same. The little girl listened, her eyes shining with pride and understanding. She didn't need to be told that she was making a difference. She already knew, but the encouragement reassured her that her efforts mattered. Other passengers were quietly watching, some with tears in their eyes, some smiling, and some just nodding in agreement. The interaction was subtle, yet powerful. The little girl's words combined with the thoughtful responses from Dwayne and John had created a small moment of shared humanity on the bus. For a few minutes, the usual rush and noise faded into the background, replaced by a quiet sense of connection, empathy, and understanding. The girl began to speak about her hopes for the future. She talked about wanting to grow up to help people, to make the world a little better, and to inspire others to notice the small things that mattered. She described a world where people cared for one another, where kindness was more important than winning or being right, and where everyone had the chance to feel valued. Her words were simple but heartfelt, painting a picture of a future that felt attainable, not impossible. Dwayne and John were both struck by her vision. It was rare to hear someone so young articulate such clear and meaningful hopes, and it made them reflect on their own lives, their own responsibilities, and the impact they could have. The bus continued its journey, and the little girl's stories continued to flow. She spoke about her friends, her family, and even strangers she had seen being kind to one another. She noticed the details that adults often missed, the small gestures that could make a day brighter, and the moments of courage that often went unrecognized. Dwayne and John listened closely, offering gentle encouragement and sharing small insights of their own. They didn't dominate the conversation, they simply added to it, creating a dialogue that felt natural and genuine. At one point, the bus hit another bump and the little girl's backpack shifted again. Dwayne caught it without hesitation and handed it back to her. She smiled. The bus continued to move slowly through the city streets, the early morning sun casting long shadows on the pavement outside. Inside, the atmosphere was quieter now, almost reflective. The little girl, sitting near the back, had grown more comfortable speaking with Dwayne and John. She no longer seemed shy or hesitant. Instead, there was a sense of trust and openness in the way she shared her thoughts. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of curiosity and determination, and her words carried a weight far beyond her years. Dwayne leaned slightly forward, his attention fully on her, and asked about her family. The little girl spoke softly but clearly, describing her parents, her siblings, and the ways they showed care for one another. She talked about the small routines that made her home feel safe and warm, like cooking together, sharing stories at night, or helping each other with schoolwork. Even in these small moments, she noticed kindness and the impact it had on people's hearts. John listened intently, nodding occasionally, genuinely interested in her perspective. He asked gentle questions, making sure she felt heard and appreciated, and she responded with thoughtful answers that reflected her awareness and empathy. The conversation soon turned to school. The little girl described her classmates, the challenges they faced, and the moments of joy they shared. She spoke about friendships that were strong, moments when someone helped a peer who was struggling, and instances when she stood up for someone being treated unfairly. Her words were simple but carried a deep understanding of human behavior. She had noticed the small details that adults often overlooked, the little acts that could make a person feel valued and respected. Dwayne and John exchanged a glance, both silently acknowledging how remarkable it was to hear such insight from someone so young. The bus hit another small bump, and the girl's backpack wobbled slightly. Dwayne instinctively steadied it, handing it back with a gentle smile. She looked up at him and spoke again, this time about her dreams. She said she wanted to grow up, to make the world better, to help people in need, and to inspire others to be kind. She didn't speak about fame or recognition. Her focus was entirely on making a positive difference. John was impressed by her clarity and purpose. He quietly encouraged her, telling her that her heart and determination were powerful tools, and that people like her could create real change in the world. The little girl listened intently, absorbing every word and clearly valuing the encouragement. As the conversation continued, the little girl began to speak about the times she had witnessed people being unkind or struggling. She described how she felt when she saw someone being left out or bullied, and how it motivated her to act, even in small ways. Her voice was calm and steady, yet there was a quiet passion behind her words. Dwayne and John were moved by her perspective. They realized that her experiences, though simple, had shaped her understanding of empathy and courage in a profound way. They offered gentle guidance, sharing stories of their own experiences and how small actions could ripple outward, affecting many lives. Other passengers on the bus began to notice the interaction more clearly. Some smiled, appreciating the innocence and wisdom of a child speaking openly. Others whispered to each other, touched by the sincerity and depth of the conversation. The presence of Dwayne and John, usually a source of excitement or distraction, now seemed secondary to the genuine connection forming between them and the little girl. She was the center of attention not because of fame or spectacle, but because her words and perspective were powerful enough to capture the hearts of those around her. The girl continued, speaking about moments when she had tried to help others and the lessons she had learned from those experiences. She spoke about patience, understanding, and the importance of listening. She had noticed that sometimes people just needed someone to be there, to pay attention, and to offer support without judgment. Dwayne nodded, impressed by her awareness. He commented that many adults forgot these lessons, and hearing them from her was a reminder of how important it was to see the world through a compassionate lens. John agreed, emphasizing that even small gestures of care could create lasting impacts on people's lives. The bus made a few more stops, and with each stop, the little girl grew more confident. She spoke about her friends, her neighbors, and even strangers she had encountered. She noticed the little things, like a smile shared between two people, a helping hand offered without expectation, or a kind word that lifted someone's spirits. Dwayne and John listened in, intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement, ensuring that she felt valued and respected. The conversation was no longer just about listening. It had become a shared moment of reflection and understanding, a rare instance where the simplicity of a child's words illuminated the complexities of human kindness. At one point, The bus had to slow down suddenly, and the little girl's backpack fell again. Dwayne reached out and steadied it with ease, handing it back gently. The girl smiled at him, a quiet, knowing smile, and then turned to John. She said she wished more people would notice the small acts of kindness happening around them, that even unnoticed gestures mattered. Her words were simple but profound, and both Dwayne and John felt a deep sense of respect for her insight. They realized that this brief encounter on a city bus was teaching them lessons they had long known but sometimes overlooked in the rush of life and fame. The conversation turned toward the little girl's hopes for the future. She spoke about wanting to help those in need, to make people's lives better, and to inspire others to act with kindness. She described her dreams with clarity and conviction, and it was evident that she had thought deeply about what it meant to care for others. Dwayne and John responded with encouragement, explaining that the qualities she was demonstrating, empathy, courage, and determination, were the foundation for making a real difference. They emphasized that she already had the tools she needed to impact the world, and that her continued efforts, no matter how small, would ripple outward in meaningful ways. The bus continued its journey, and the little girl spoke less frequently, but her presence remained impactful. Her thoughtful expressions, quiet determination, and genuine empathy created an atmosphere of reflection and connection. Dwayne and John maintained their gentle engagement, listening attentively and offering insights when appropriate. The rest of the passengers began to sense the unique energy in the bus, a quiet appreciation for a moment of shared humanity that was rare and fleeting but deeply meaningful. At one point, the little girl mentioned a teacher who had inspired her. She spoke about how the teacher encouraged students to notice the world around them, to care for one another, and to act with kindness. Dwayne and John nodded, recognizing the importance of mentors, and the bus moved steadily through the streets, carrying its mixture of passengers, each absorbed in their own routines, unaware that a small but extraordinary moment was unfolding in the back. The little girl had become more relaxed, her small frame no longer hunched over her backpack. Instead, she sat with a quiet confidence, her words flowing naturally as she spoke about the things that mattered to her. Dwayne and John remained close by, listening attentively, offering encouragement, and asking gentle questions that made her feel valued and understood. At one point, the bus had to slow down suddenly to avoid a cyclist, and the little girl's backpack slipped from her lap again. Dwayne reached over instinctively and steadied it, handing it back with a reassuring smile. She looked up at him and then at John, and in a calm, steady voice, she said that she wished more people would listen to kids like her, who noticed the small acts of kindness, the little details of everyday life that adults often overlook. Her words were simple, but their meaning was profound. They spoke of a hope for a world where awareness and empathy mattered more than noise or fame, and they carried a weight that was impossible for either wrestler to ignore. John nodded, carefully choosing his words to encourage her without overwhelming her. He told her that her observations were important, and that noticing the world in this way was a rare gift. Dwayne added that her words and actions already made a difference, even in ways she might not see. The girl listened quietly, her eyes wide with understanding, and a small smile crossed her face. She seemed to absorb the encouragement like a seed taking root, strengthening the resolve she already carried within her heart. The bus continued on, stopping occasionally to pick up and drop off passengers. Each stop brought a brief moment of interruption, but the conversation with the little girl remained constant. She spoke about her friends, the moments when someone showed kindness, and the times when she had tried to make a difference herself. Her stories were simple, yet they revealed a level of understanding and empathy that was remarkable for someone her age. Dwayne and John exchanged glances, both silently acknowledging how unusual and inspiring it was to hear a child speak with such clarity and insight. The little girl then began talking about the people she admired in her life. She mentioned her parents, her teachers, and neighbors who had shown her acts of kindness. She spoke of how these small gestures had shaped her understanding of the world, and encouraged her to act in ways that would make others feel cared for and valued. Dwayne and John listened intently, impressed by her perspective and the depth of her observations. They realized that this moment was not just about hearing a child speak. It was about witnessing the formation of a compassionate and thoughtful individual. At another stop, a few more passengers boarded, glancing curiously toward the back. Some recognized Dwayne and John, but most were drawn to the little girl, sensing that something special was happening. Despite the presence of strangers and cameras on phones capturing bits of the moment, she remained focused, sharing her thoughts without hesitation. Her voice carried a gentle strength, and her ideas were expressed with a clarity that made even the adults around her pause and reflect. Dwayne asked her what inspired her to think about kindness and empathy at such a young age. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke about noticing how people felt, how they reacted to each other, and how small gestures could create moments of happiness or comfort. She explained that she didn't need recognition or praise. She just wanted to make a difference even in small ways. John responded by sharing a story from his childhood, about a time when a simple act of caring had made a huge difference in someone's life. He spoke gently, ensuring that his words encouraged her without overshadowing her own experiences. Dwayne added a few thoughts of his own, reflecting on the importance of noticing others and taking small actions to help them. The little girl listened attentively, nodding as they spoke. She asked questions about the experiences Dwayne and John shared, showing genuine curiosity and a desire to learn. Her questions were thoughtful, reflecting an understanding that kindness and empathy were skills to be practiced and nurtured. The wrestlers felt a growing sense of admiration for her, recognizing that even in a brief conversation, they could provide guidance and encouragement that might shape her future actions. As the bus moved along, the little girl spoke about the times she had faced challenges herself. She described moments when she wanted to act but felt unsure, when she hesitated, or when she worried about what others might think. Dwayne and John reassured her that it was natural to feel uncertain at times, and that courage was not about never feeling fear, but about choosing to act despite it. The girl absorbed these words thoughtfully, her expression reflecting a combination of determination and understanding. She seemed to grasp the idea that bravery and kindness were often intertwined, and that each small action contributed to a larger picture of goodness in the world. The bus rolled forward, and the conversation continued seamlessly. The little girl began speaking about her hopes for the future. She envisioned a world where people cared for one another, where small acts of kindness were noticed and appreciated, and where individuals took responsibility for making the world a better place. Dwayne and John listened with growing respect, offering gentle encouragement and affirmations. They emphasized that she already possessed qualities that could create meaningful change, and that even small, consistent efforts could have a profound impact over time. At one stop, the little girl's backpack shifted again, and Dwayne quickly steadied it, handing it back with a smile. She looked up at him and then at John, and with a small, confident voice said that she hoped everyone would notice the little things, the everyday acts of care and kindness that often went unseen. Her words resonated with the passengers around her, many of whom smiled quietly, feeling touched by the simplicity and honesty of her message. Dwayne and John both nodded, recognizing the truth in her words and the importance of paying attention to the small but meaningful details in life. The bus continued its route, and the little girl's stories and reflections became more personal. She spoke about moments when she had comforted friends, shared with others, or stood up for someone in need. Each story illustrated her growing understanding of empathy, courage, and responsibility. Dwayne and John listened attentively, offering encouragement and validation. They asked gentle questions to help her expand on her thoughts, ensuring she felt heard and respected. The interaction was not just a conversation, it was a mutual exchange of ideas and values, a moment of learning and connection for all involved. Other passengers were quietly observing, some nodding in agreement, others wiping away tears, and a few capturing the moment on their phones. Despite the attention, the little girl remained focused, speaking with honesty and clarity. Her words were not rehearsed or performative. They were natural expressions of her observations and feelings. Dwayne and John continued to engage with her, reinforcing the importance of her perspective and the value of her insights. They emphasized that her actions and words already had an impact, and that she could continue to influence those around her in meaningful ways. As the bus neared a busy intersection, the little girl spoke about the people she admired in her life. She mentioned her family, her teachers, and neighbors who had shown kindness, explaining how their actions had inspired her to act in similar ways. Dwayne and John listened, acknowledging the importance of role models and guidance in shaping compassionate individuals. They reminded her that she was capable of being a role model herself, that her actions and words could inspire others to notice and act with kindness. The bus moved on, and the little girl's reflections became more forward-looking. She spoke about her dreams of helping others, of making the world a better place, and of inspiring positive change. Dwayne and John encouraged her, emphasizing that the qualities she was demonstrating, empathy, courage, and determination, were exactly what the world needed. They reassured her that even small, consistent actions could create ripples that spread far beyond her immediate surroundings. The girl listened attentively, her eyes shining with understanding and quiet pride. The atmosphere on the bus had shifted subtly. Passengers were now more attentive, drawn into the conversation by the honesty and depth of the little girl's words. Dwayne and John continued to engage with her gently, offering insights and encouragement and reflecting on the lessons she was teaching them as well. The moment had evolved into a shared experience of reflection, learning, and human connection. A rare instance where the simplicity of a child's words illuminated the complexity of kindness, courage, and empathy. By the time the bus approached another stop, the little girl had shared numerous stories, reflections, and insights. Her words had touched the hearts of everyone listening, creating a quiet ripple of inspiration. Dwayne and John felt a deep sense of admiration and gratitude for having had the opportunity to engage with her. They recognized that this brief encounter was teaching them lessons that went beyond fame, power, or experience. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices, spoken with honesty and sincerity, could have a profound impact on the world. The little girl hugged her backpack tightly once more, looking out the window at the city passing by. Her expression was thoughtful, filled with hope, determination, and quiet reflection. Dwayne and John watched her, feeling a sense of responsibility, admiration, and inspiration. They knew that encounters like this were rare and precious, moments when the perspective and honesty of a child could remind adults of the importance of empathy, listening, and meaningful action. The rest of the passengers seemed to feel it too, quietly acknowledging the significance of the moment, recognizing the power of a young voice speaking truthfully from the heart. Odell's in shaping compassionate individuals. They commented on how lucky she was to have someone who nurtured her awareness and encouraged her to act on it. The girl's eyes shone with pride and gratitude, and it was clear that she valued the guidance and encouragement she had received in her life. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on various aspects of life, kindness, and personal responsibility. The little girl spoke with a balance of innocence and wisdom, illustrating a remarkable understanding of human nature. Dwayne and John responded thoughtfully, ensuring that she felt heard and appreciated while also sharing lessons from their own experiences. Each exchange built upon the last, creating a sense of continuity and depth in what could have been a simple bus ride. The moment was becoming more than just a conversation. It was a small lesson in empathy, courage, and the power of listening. By the time the bus reached a particularly busy intersection, the little girl had shared numerous stories and insights. She had spoken about helping others, noticing acts of kindness, learning from her experiences, and hoping for a better future. Dwayne and John felt inspired and humbled by her perspective. They realized that even brief interactions, when approached with attention and care, could leave lasting impressions. The little girl, through her honesty and clarity, had created a ripple effect, touching the hearts of those who had the privilege to listen. The bus moved forward, and the little girl hugged her backpack tightly again, looking out the window. Her expression was thoughtful, a mixture of hope, determination, and quiet reflection. Dwayne and John watched her, feeling a sense of responsibility and admiration. They understood that encounters like this were rare and precious, moments when a child's wisdom and honesty could remind adults of the importance of empathy, listening, and action. The rest of the passengers seemed to feel it too, the quiet impact of a young voice speaking truthfully and from the heart. As the bus continued on its route, the little girl's stories became shorter, but the meaning behind them lingered. Dwayne and John remained engaged, asking occasional questions, offering encouragement, and reflecting on the lessons being shared. The conversation had shifted from an exchange of words to a shared understanding, a moment of genuine connection that transcended age, experience, and status. The little girl's presence and perspective had transformed a simple bus ride into an unforgettable lesson in humanity, one that Dwayne, John, and the passengers would carry with them long after the ride ended. a small, shy smile, and then turned to John. She said that she wanted people to notice the little things. The things that didn't always make the news or appear in stories, but that mattered in everyday life. Her words were simple, but they carried a message that was hard to ignore. That kindness, attention, and care could make a real difference in the world, no matter how small. John and Dwayne were both deeply moved. They realized that this brief interaction on a bus was teaching them more than many years of experience or public speaking could. The little girl's honesty, clarity, and empathy were a reminder that sometimes the simplest words, spoken from the heart, could have the greatest impact. They shared a quiet look, both recognizing the importance of this moment and the lesson it carried. For a few minutes it felt like the whole world had narrowed to the small space of the bus, where a child's words and the thoughtful responses of two men had created something meaningful and lasting. As the bus continued its route, the little girl spoke a little less, but her presence remained powerful. Dwayne and John continued to engage with her gently, asking questions about her experiences, her hopes, and the small acts of kindness she had seen or participated in. Each answer she gave was thoughtful, reflective, and inspiring. The wrestlers felt a growing sense of responsibility, realizing that even brief encouragement and attention could nurture the seeds of compassion and courage in a young heart. The interaction had shifted, from a casual conversation to a moment of genuine connection. The little girl's words were not rehearsed or calculated. They were natural, flowing from a place of honesty and observation. Dwayne and John responded in kind, offering encouragement, sharing experiences, and validating her thoughts. The rest of the passengers continued their routines, but there was a subtle change in the air. A quiet acknowledgement that something special was happening, a reminder of the impact that small moments could have. By the time the bus reached the next few stops, the little girl had shared stories of kindness, courage, and small victories that warmed hearts. Dwayne and John felt a sense of quiet satisfaction, a reminder that sometimes the world's most profound lessons came from unexpected places, from voices we might overlook if we weren't paying attention. The little girl, in her simplicity, had reminded them that hope, kindness, and courage could exist anywhere, even in the back of a bus on a regular morning. And as she hugged her backpack a little tighter, looking out the window at the passing city, it was clear that she carried a spark that could light up much more than just that bus. It could reach far beyond, touching hearts, inspiring change, and reminding everyone that listening, truly listening, was a powerful gift, admiration, and a sense of responsibility. Meeting someone like this, even briefly, was a reminder of why they worked as hard as they did to inspire, support, and give back. The bus hit another bump, and the girl's backpack wobbled again. Dwayne reached over casually, catching it without making a show of it, and handed it back. The girl looked at him, and then at John, and in a voice that was steady and calm, she said she hoped one day people would listen to kids like her, who notice things adults often ignore. Her words were simple, yet the impact was profound. In that moment, the bus felt different. There was a quiet energy, a mix of reflection and awareness, spreading slowly through the passengers who had been paying attention. The wrestlers felt it too, an unspoken understanding that even a small voice could create ripples far larger than anyone expected. Dwayne spoke first, choosing his words carefully so as not to overwhelm her. He told her that her heart and her words were special, that courage didn't always come from strength or size, but from speaking the truth and caring for others. John added that sometimes the smallest voices, the quietest hearts could make the biggest difference, and that noticing the world around her and wanting to help was the beginning of something amazing. The girl listened intently, her expression a mixture of pride, curiosity, and wonder. There was no arrogance,